I think that's a big misnomer that people think, oh, in order to join a tech company, you need to have all this technical experience. There wouldn't be anybody working at any tech companies if that were the case,
Thank you,
because
Carl, for your time today. Really, really appreciate it. Would you please tell me a little bit about yourself?
yeah, excited to be here to spend some time with you. So my name's Carl Beckstein. I'm originally from Boston. I'm a PM at Amazon right now, but I have a little bit of an interesting path I took. Kind of came from a non-traditional background. So from the East Coast, from Boston, spent about 5 or 6 years working in politics,
Mm.
where I did about as different as you can get from Amazon. Worked on a few presidential campaigns. Decided I wanted to try out working in the private sector, so went and got my MBA at UNC, where you and I met. And then the last 3 years have been at Amazon, first in an in-stock manager or a supply chain manager role, and then for the last year and a half as a PM in our private brands org.
So you mentioned that you are coming from a non-traditional background.
Mhm.
So when you first decided to go to get your MBA, was your first thought what like going into tech, or was it just like I'm just going to explore my options?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually did not think about tech at all when I first was going to business school. I had this idea of being a consultant, like this would be some
Ah,
glorious career. You get to work on big picture strategy. You get to work in all kinds of different projects. That's what I thought I wanted to do. Turns out I didn't have the best interview day for my consulting role. And I thought, well, what else is out there? So I thought, well, tech, you have these really cool companies that are growing really fast, and there seems like there's a lot of interesting work. Let me try it out. And the irony is that I think I got, and why I love working at Amazon is that I think I actually get to do more of that strategic thinking
mm,
and working on a variety of projects at Amazon than I ever would have working in consulting. So in a weird way, um, I didn't go into consulting, but I'm doing more of what I actually wanted to do than I think had I worked in consulting.
yeah, no, makes total sense. So you interned at Amazon and then
Mhm,
got the full-time offer to come back.
mhm.
So would you be I'm asking these questions to kind of hype up in the beginning, but like what was your first reaction when you first got that job offer? Like either internship or the full-time offer, whichever was more exciting.
Definitely the full time offer. That was exciting. I remember it was the last day of my internship, and just you're waiting, kind of sitting on pins and needles, and I had a good feeling. You kind of during
Mm,
your summer internship, you start to kind of get a feeling one way or the other. Is it going well? Is it
mhm.
not going well? And I'd felt it going well, but you never want to be too sure. So it was at like 9:30 in the morning, my last day, and I get a message from my manager. He just goes, "Hey, meet me in my office." And I go, "All right,
Wow.
this is it." So you go in, close the door, and uh, first I kind of see kind of just a emotionless view look on his face, and I'm like, "Oh man, like is this? Did I not get it?" And he's like, "Congratulations, you got the offer," and just uh, so exciting.
That
So yeah,
feeling.
that was definitely the uh, a pretty
Yeah.
memorable moment.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. I still remember the time that I got the offer too. So it's can't really forget about those times. So tell me about your process of getting into the company. Like you
Mhm,
interned at Amazon and then you got the full-time
mhm,
offer. So I would assume that, your internship, you didn't really have another interview when you were doing full-time.
mhm.
Tell me a little bit about the process that you went through when you were looking for that internship.
Yeah. So when I was looking for an internship, I think kind of like I mentioned, I wanted something where I could work on something that was more strategic and where there'd be variety in work. I never really thought in my career that I wanted to be a specialist. I've always wanted to be more of a generalist. That was kind of what my experience was more in my previous career when I worked in politics, more of a generalist. And when I got to the summer internship at Amazon, the context of the internship was supply chain. I had to manage
Mm,
the the supply chain for our outdoors business. But
Mm,
even though that was the context of it, there were a lot of ambiguous problems um, and projects I had to take on where you had to think strategically. And a lot of
mhm,
the things we had practiced for consulting interviews or the consulting skills and frameworks class that we did, a lot of that really applied to the work I did in my summer internship. And um, even in just a 12-week period, I was able to take on a variety of interesting projects, and it really kind of checked the box for me of what I wanted. And even though the context of supply chain was not something I was expecting, it definitely, I think, it did a good job of introducing me to kind of the Amazonian way of how we work. And I think we're uh, in a lot of roles, and most roles, I think you have that ability to think big and to work on a variety of things, not
mhm.
just the same problem, the same process every single day.
So it's kind of interesting, like how you literally had like zero experience in supply chain
Mhm.
before coming into Amazon.
Yeah.
I mean, like, what were there any sort of like learning curves when you first joined? Obviously, like private sector or just like normal. I wouldn't say normal, but like just corporate USA, and then what you've been doing in the past is super different. So, like, I would assume that you had some learning curve, and like, if so,
Mhm.
what were some of the stuff that you leveraged to, like overcome those?
Yeah. Um, so I think the probably the biggest learning curve was working with data.
Ah,
You just don't work with a lot of data in politics. If you're someone who's a pollster, you're building voter models, of course you'll work in data then, but for most other people, there's not nearly as much time in data, just not the same level of analytic kind of rigor. So that was definitely something where I
mm-hmm,
had to catch up quickly, and
mm-hmm.
I didn't even know what SQL was. I mean, that was talk about a completely foreign language to me, and having to pull data or build reports. That was definitely the hardest thing for me in trying to, how do I build a report using SQL? I have no idea. So I think that was the toughest part. The resources were just at Amazon, you have a lot of opportunity to learn, whether it's through different learning modules, going to office hours, just picking people's brains, doing coffee chats. And I think for me, it was just a combination of all of it and trying to
Yeah.
say, this is not my strength, but coming into, I mean, probably, if not the most data centric company in the world, one of the most data centric companies in the world, I need to learn pretty quickly how to do this.
Yeah.
So I think it was just a variety of not being afraid to grab coffee with someone and put time on their calendar and say, I have no idea how to do X, Y, and Z, but I see that you did it before. I see here you built this a
Mm-hmm.
comparable report or whatever it might be. Like, walk me through how you did it. Like, how did you do this? Like, sitting with someone in SQL and being like, what does this work? What does this select phrase mean? What is um, so I think a good combination of trying to learn on your own, but also really just learn from the people that have done it successfully before you.
So you mentioned SQL,
Mhm.
and as a supply chain manager, like I would assume that you use SQL in your pretty much day to day like life at Amazon. Like, how did you do it? It's not something that you can just ask someone to, hey, can you teach me do it, and then you kind of learn it like in like 1 or 2 days, and then like apply it. It's like you need some time to do it, right? And then
Yeah,
the internship itself was like only 12 weeks max. Like, how are you able to kind of quickly ramp up and then actually contribute and then get that full-time offer?
yeah. I mean, I definitely struggled with SQL. To this day, I still struggle with SQL, but um, so that problem never gone away. But I think part of it is, and I think SQL is a good example of this. We could apply this anywhere. Is um, if you need to build a report for whatever metrics it is or whatever we had to do. Obviously, for my context, this was supply chain metrics. Um, it makes no sense for me to try to write a SQL query from scratch. Like I'm never going to be able to do that well. I'm either going to miss something or there'll be an error or I won't have thought about something else we could do. So my thought process was, why don't I take what someone else has written already, some good SQL
Mm,
code, and just try to modify it for myself. And I know the basic, select where from clauses, but after that, I'm not going to be the most knowledgeable person. So if I can take a query someone else has written for a report
Mm-hmm.
that's 70% similar to what I want, and I can find another report that has 20% of what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I can work with someone who's good at SQL to try to kind of, hey, how do we change this or that here together? I can probably get about 90% of the way there. And then that's where things like office hours were super helpful, because they can, if I can give them the meat of the data I
Yeah.
want to pull, I have the tables, I have the columns I want, I have, you know, things sorted or filtered the way I want, then they can kind of figure out, cross the T's and dot the I's. But that was what I did. And to this day, I mean, what's the phrase that like imitation is the highest form of flattery? Like if you can copy great SQL code, like don't be afraid to plagiarize. Just take Young's SQL
Yeah.
code that Young has written and just use it, modify it for your own
Yeah.
reports.
I can't agree more. Really, no. So now you work as a product manager. Can you tell me a little bit about what you do?
Sure. So working in the private label side of Amazon, probably a little bit less traditional type of product management. So for us, the major brands we work with would be brands like Amazon Basics, Amazon Essentials, Salimo, probably a handful of different private brands out there that people are familiar with when shopping on Amazon. And for us, it's we don't think of launching one product, we think of launching collections of products. So the way I like to think about it is, so I have this hockey puck on my desk. So let's say hypothetically that we wanted to go launch private label hockey pucks. It'd be a little different than launching an Alexa, right? You're still thinking about it from a similar way, but a lot of it is, if we want to go launch a hockey
Mm-hmm.
puck, I'm probably not going to have a lot of technology that goes to differentiate this hockey puck from somebody else's hockey puck.
Uh-huh.
So we have to think about how can we create value for customers. There's a lot of ways. Sometimes it's, can we get a hockey puck to customers that is cheaper, for a better price? Is it an issue of selection? Is
Mm-hmm.
there I don't know, another type of hockey puck that other retailers aren't and Amazon isn't carrying, and we want more of that. So I would say you start off with trying to figure out what's the value you want to provide to customers, and then kind of work backwards from there. Then you work on trying to, whether it's find the right cost structure, work with the right manufacturers, design it in the right way so that you're kind of answering that
Yeah.
customer pain point, and try to kind of create value wherever it is. And who knows, maybe there will be some type of an Alexa hockey puck one day that private brands can launch. But for today, that's not a
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So I think part of it is different from traditional product management in that you're launching more products. There tends to be less of a technical side to it. Not always. Like there's some
Mm-hmm.
more technical things we'll
Of
do.
course.
And then we also run the P&L once a product is launched. So it isn't
Mm.
hey, we launched this great feature for Alexa, it's launched onto the next thing. It's, we now manage it kind of into perpetuity. So whether it's looking at how do we grow our revenue, how do we improve our profitability, you kind of get which I really enjoy, is you get the product side of it, but you also get the P&L ownership side of it, which I find fun. So I think that's kind of how
Yeah.
at least in our org, where we're a little bit different than probably some traditional technical PM jobs that are
Yeah.
all over the different tech companies.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. It's just not, it's basically like inception to actual product launch, and then
Mm-hmm.
also like managing the P&L as well, like after.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. So as a product manager, what's your favorite part of your role, and what's something that you don't really, well, something that you least like about your role as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. I always find the most fun kind of being your upfront, figuring out what is your vision. Because in a lot of ways there's ambiguity. If I want to go launch, enter the hockey market, the hockey industry, like there's no one right way to do it, right? You could do it a variety of different ways. You kind of start off with this ambiguity of what do we want to do, and then how do we get there? So I think the beginning phases of before you even get to a product, of saying what's our vision for wherever we're trying to go, and then once we have that vision, what's our strategy to actually get there in the next 2, 3, 4 years, however many years it is to get there. That's always my favorite. I like whiteboarding and doing that.
Yeah.
I would say least favorite. I still sometimes struggle with SQL. So I think sometimes right, like one of the great things about Amazon is you get a lot of ambiguity, and there's sometimes big picture ambiguity, which I really enjoy. I think that's a ton of fun. There's sometimes also more tactical ambiguity,
Mm-hmm.
as in how do we pull these data points? And if there's not an existing reporting system out there, then you kind of go write a query and go find it yourself. And I think that's still something that I'll struggle with, and definitely not my favorite part. So usually that's when I find some friendly BIEs or some other colleagues that have written a report that
Yeah.
does something similar, and try to
Yeah.
work with them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love it. I also have those things, and like I'm like, here I like did 60% of it. Can you just like, do
Mm-hmm.
the rest of it, or can you figure it out kind of thing? So totally
Yeah,
get it.
yeah. No bigger frustration than like writing a query. You try to run it, and it's like failed. You're like, oh, it was this one small thing over here, right? Fix that small thing, run it again, fail. And once you do that like 15 times, you're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing
Exactly.
wrong here?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's already my last question, but advice for those who want to join a tech company without any sort of background.
yeah, I think that's a big misnomer that people think, oh, in order to join a tech company, you need to have all this technical experience. There wouldn't be anybody working at any tech companies if that were the case, because it's like in order to work for a tech company, you have to already be at a tech company. It doesn't make any sense. So I think it's to be successful to get a job at a tech company. I think there are probably a few ways to do it. One is by function. So if you're
Mm,
great at finance, you're great at marketing, you're great at supply chain, whatever it might be. If you're really strong in a functional area, tech companies need those roles everywhere. So if you're great at finance at company A, Amazon and Facebook and Google and everyone else need finance people. So like that's I think a pretty direct route. I think on more of the product management, program management side, there's a distinct way that we think about things when we go about it. We always want to start with the customer and work backwards. Look at what are the customer pain points, and really focus a lot of things around that. That's kind of
mm-hmm,
a big commonality around all product
mm-hmm,
roles. And I think you can still think that way and still work that way, even if you're not at a tech company. So if you're
mm-hmm,
working in CPG, you can still work around what the customer pain points are and work on solutions there, whether it's packaging or with um, launching new variants of whatever it might be. If you're working at in financial services, your back end client, whether that's different institutions or individuals or whatever, are there pain points that they have either in the process of the financial services, or in realizing some type of gain, whatever it might be. So I think you
mm-hmm,
can take the method of the way product managers think, kind of the working backwards design thinking method. You can apply that anywhere. And if you're at a non-tech company, if you can show that you've used that way of thinking and you've approached problems in a similar way, I'm a lot more likely to hire you into Amazon or whoever it might be at any other
yeah,
company, because we say we need someone to think this way and work this way. Maybe the context is different working at whatever company, but it seems like I could just pick you up from that company and place you into this whatever tech scenario. And if you're thinking about it and working about it the right way, the end result should probably be pretty similar. So I would say those two ways, if you're not already at a tech company, functional transition, probably the easiest, most direct. And then if you're looking for more of the product side, try to demonstrate that you think like a PM, you solve problems like a
mm.
PM, even if you're working on something completely different from technology.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And I think it's all about the transferable skills, right? Like what you can do, what you know, it's the core of it. It's not it wouldn't change even if you come from A or B or C. Just like, if you have the fundamentals, you got it. I think that's pretty much what it
Yeah.
is.
I think
Yeah.
too, just there's something to be said also for just hard work and persistence. I mean, there are people
Mm.
who um, they try for one company, they get shut down. They try for another, they get shut down. But when they try for the 10th, the 20th, the 30th company, eventually they're going to get a yes. Uh, and if they
Yep.
do a great job, guess what? Those first, whatever, 10, 20, 30 companies that said no are going to look back and go like, what were we thinking? So I think just having that hard work, that persistence, if you get shut down by one company, like don't let that ruin your
Yeah.
spirit. I know that feeling of getting rejected by companies. Felt that at business school, but I think it's just keep on pushing, keep on going. Don't let
Yeah.
potentially one company rejecting you ruin your spirit.
Yeah. No, I love it. Hey man, that was all for today. Thank you so much for your time and insight.
Yeah, happy to have done this. This was fun. Hope it was
Awesome.
helpful.
Yes, this is super helpful. Thank you so much, girl.
Thank you.